This is what happens when you go live. You just have to like wing it, basically. Going live. Yeah, it says I can see you, but it says I can't see me. So that's really weird, isn't it? That one. I wonder if that worked. Good. So question 1, Adam, first and foremost. How many dating apps have you been on?
3, I think. No,
which ones were they?
And a few more, actually, a couple more. I've been on Bumble, Hinge, Tinder very, very briefly, Happen very, very briefly, and that one for the kinky one.
The kinky one.
Feels
like it.
Feels, that's it. Yeah, even though that was a bit crap, to be honest.
It was a bit crap.
Well, yeah. It didn't quite fit for what there was a moment in my dating thing. I was like, yeah, let's do this, and then I've realised that threesomes between people you don't know is a bit like, So
yeah, it's a bit boring.
Yeah.
No. So what, is that what you kind of? Why did you go on that app for first and foremost?
I don't know, like just because it felt like adventurous, I suppose, and putting yourself out there into doing something that I'd never done before. And in a way, like it fulfilled a need, and it was kind of like a bit rock and roll, I suppose, and a bit kind of doing that. But then I realised that when having in that scenario, in a threesome situation, is actually the intimacy between you and your partner that it creates with the third person there, and the sense of teamwork and camaraderie that is the thing that I relish or really value. Yeah, and then so it just didn't quite materialize as I thought it might. And so it was like, good idea, and then I was like, nah. It just went from that. And when once I'd dated someone, and then that scenario arose and tried it in that context, it was like, well, there's no point in doing it outside of that context.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Straight into the deep end. Straight in
at the deep end. I know. I genuinely didn't think you were going to go there, but all right, it's fine. It's Wednesday morning. We can go wherever you want to go. That's the whole point of a Talkward. Okay, so when you're on a dating app and you are having a little scroll through, what kind of stuff stands out to you? What kind of stuff makes you go, oh, I'm interested in that?
Oh, so good stuff. Right. There's when you're when you look at the photos, for one, it is something that when you see them doing something and the photos seem natural, and they're just interesting, and it's not all like you often see head poses tilted to the side, and every photo you flick through and they don't actually move, or their face doesn't move, and it's like, I want a genuine smile. I want to see you smiling genuinely, as opposed to whatever fake smile. And so it's all been like a million shots to get the perfect shot. I'd rather have a bit because it's almost like the soul and the reality and the stuff comes through from the photos.
Do you like the videos? When people put little videos up, like on Hinge, you can put a little video of yourself. Do you like that?
Yes, I do. That's right. It's because then that's almost more natural, isn't it? So you can you can see someone in their own environment, and particularly if they're dancing or wherever it might be. Because I'm quite a big fan of dancing, so if someone's dancing, that's great. And
I saw that at the weekend. You were on the dance floor. Somebody gave you a multicolored. No, this one was just red, wasn't it? It was a red LED lighting whip or whatever it was, and you were
it was that,
you were doing your thing. Liked it. So obviously you're like a bit more natural. You like people to have their natural smiles and maybe a video or two. Is there any of the have you ever come across someone on an app where you think, oh, that was a bit of an overshare? Do you think oversharing, or do you think like radical honesty is interesting, or do you think it's a bit too much?
I think I don't think overshare necessarily. I've never seen anyone like that. I'd go, whoa, that's a bit much. And I think the more specific you can be, and this is for myself, and I learned this. Someone told me or read it somewhere, that if you think about it, obviously you just got to be the most honest version of you that you can possibly be. And if you have quirks and things, or whatever you do, if it's a very strange hobby, as an example, then say it, do that. And then it's but it almost narrows down, because that's going to come out eventually. So what's the point in going on a date with someone if you do have these, quirks? Just be the most honest version of yourself as you can be. and therefore you perhaps won't get as many matches, but the ones that you match on would be stronger, I guess, or more, because it's the real you. I don't see the point in, if you put a fake, it's not about I guess it might be for some people, getting about as many likes as you possibly can or many matches as you can. It's like there's an ego thing there, but it's like, is that what you're there for? And it's like, fine, but if you are actually there for dating, or there's obviously the different apps, like Tinder is like, but even more of just a hookup app. And then going through Bumble, I suppose, and Hinge are considered, and then you've got like Plenty of Fish and all those ones. And I think that they're almost like a gradient of your seriousness with regards to if you're what you're looking for.
My sister met her partner on Plenty of Fish.
Yeah, well, so I think they work. The dating apps do serve a purpose, but they're a double-edged sword as well, I think. Yeah.
So. No, good point. So in terms of kind of the usual thing which happens to most people, I'm going to see if it's happened to you. Have you ever been ghosted on a dating app? Have you ever had someone, and what I mean by ghosted to the listeners, those are people are going to watch the video afterwards. Ghosting means basically when you are reaching out to someone and all of a sudden they just go and disappear and they don't respond like they normally would if they were in front of you for a conversation. They just disappear. Poof, gone.
Yes.
How does that make you feel?
It's just part and parcel of dating apps, isn't it, really?
You think?
It's like, I think so. It's like, if you're in the game, you've got, there's stuff that happens, and it's like, and so people are there and you start chatting, and you sometimes they just stop, and it's like, and I'm not saying that I may have stopped, but I've never most of my messages that have stopped have maybe I've closed the conversation and said but I think everyone's perhaps on dating apps particularly been a bit guilty of just not
ghosting.
But not necessarily intently, doing it with intent, just kind of accidentally doing it, and then maybe some time passes and you're like, oh God, I can't get in contact now, or whatever it might be. But I definitely have, and it's just one of those things, you just write it off, as I do. I'm like, well, it's kind of like, oh, it's one of those things, and I go, well, even is it their loss? I don't know. I don't want to sound that arrogant about it, but it's just not meant to. I guess it's not meant to be. Yes. Yeah, it's just not meant to be.
I feel like when I've been on dating apps, not that I have a whole load of experience on dating apps. I have been 3 times on Hinge, and I downloaded Bumble for 24 hours once, but all of which I've been on for no longer than a week at a time. A couple of times just a day. And when I have been on there, I think in terms of ghosting and stuff, I like to make sure that I'm closing because I have this thing about closing the loop, which is, I'll show you here for anybody that's going to be listening to this afterwards that can't see the video. There's a figure of 8 is that I'm showing Adam right now. So basically I have this thing where it's about closing the loop, and you're in charge of one side of the loop and the other person is in charge of the other side. And basically the interactions I believe we need to be open and closed. If they're not open and closed, there's this room for assumption, there's this room for rejection, for feelings, for all these kind of disappointments to come up and all these fears. And I've spent so many times when I've think oh my God, that guy didn't even text me back, and being like, oh my God, what did I do wrong? And where did I go with that? And feeling really down. I thought, if I'm going to do any dating apps, I'm going to make sure I close the conversations, or at least say, hey, not available, or I've seen this, I'll get back to you at some point. Or when I've spoken to guys and I've said, I don't do just coffees with people. I can't stand the idea of just going for coffee with someone I don't know. So I make sure I video call them before I go and chat to them in any other extra way. And then if I get on with them on video, then it's cool. If I don't, then I obviously won't meet. But I will say, I'm not interested, or if I think about it for a little bit. But there was one guy that I felt a bit guilty about, because I forgot, I basically lost his number on my phone and I couldn't call him back to tell him that I wasn't interested. And I felt a bit guilty about it. I was a bit like, oh God, I can't believe I've just done this to him. And I felt a bit bad, because he would actually express to me on the phone that he had quite a traumatic kind of past with rejection and stuff. And we'd gone really deep into this conversation, and it just so happened that I couldn't reach back out and say, I'm really sorry, I'm not interested. And it looked like I ghosted him, and I felt so bad about it. But do you think people really care, or do they just think it's like, oh, it's just what it is? Because I think a lot of people care more than they say they do.
Yes, I think the latter's true. Well, I think they care more than they realize that they care. In that your body still will have a reaction to it, even though your mind might, you might think that, oh yeah, I don't care in your brain, but your body has that kind of that feeling of rejection. So I think it's not. I don't think that's part of the reason I think dating apps is unhealthy, or are unhealthy rather, and not the best for dating. But flip side to that is that, when one of my practices when dealing with or starting to accept quite severe anxiety was to sit in ambiguity for as long as possible. Like, so if you so in you're referencing that infinity sign of closing the loop, like not going into situations where the loop wasn't closed. So I had to sit in the rejection or sit in the fear of abandonment and be held in that space. And like last year, it wasn't a dating app, but I was held in that space for like 4 months, which was horrible, but very, very good for me. So I think that in hindsight, I think that there is a benefit to those things for people that are on the dating apps. If you go slightly deeper than the surface level the dating apps are, that there are ways that when you feel rejected, it's like, okay, but if I then what happens when you feel rejected? Do you feel like needy and trying to get it more? Do you feel avoidant? Like we were talking about attachment yesterday. There's always, and so there's an element you can use it as a way for self-growth, so if I'm feeling rejected or I get rejected rather, and then I feel like, is that, something after that, there's probably something underneath that, so you could dig into it. And being held in that space is not necessarily a bad thing, but it is if your ego just goes over the top and goes, I don't care, and that's essentially suppressing the emotion.
I think a lot of people don't want to look like they care because it puts them into a vulnerable space, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I know, like you said, I've sat in rejection. I've done breath work on rejection. I can remember probably the deepest cry I've ever had was rejection. And all cries pretty much are the same. It's just different stories as to why we cry. But the deepest one I think I ever had was at a breathwork session. And I just totally accepted the rejection. And I was like, oh my God, it was awful. But after it, I felt amazing. I felt like I really shifted something. I really felt like I'd got through that abandonment issue that was there.
Yeah.
Doesn't stop things popping up occasionally as well. Like, if you're always going to feel rejection again at some point, it doesn't mean because you've mastered it once it's never coming up again. But getting used to understanding rejection and that it is just a feeling is quite important. That's quite a lot of what you do with your work. If you want to actually explain, while you have your lovely t-shirt on and while you've got Adam and Plight Club, why don't you tell us exactly what Plight Club is? I know you've been on the radio before, but you haven't actually been on it here. So tell us now, we can see you. What is Plight Club?
So Plight Club is connection clothing. So there's different t-shirts. The main one, or the signature one, being Vulnerable, so rebelling against your vulnerability. And the goal of Plight Club is to genuinely inspire people to be more vulnerable and open in that way, but then also empower them with the tools and the language to be able to express how they're feeling. So in that with vulnerability, and it all started from a place of a journey with my own anxiety, and then it's the empowering side of it helps people. Like there's a Plight Club program that helps people understand, what feelings are, what emotions are, how they manifest in the body, that they are essentially just energy moving. Is we have three types of reaction in our body, but they all essentially the same thing happens, and it's like getting an understanding of what that is, and then being able to actually break the cycle, notice patterns, notice triggers, various different things, and then choose to, when you can see the patterns, you can actually go, okay, I've moved that from my subconscious to my conscious, and I can choose to do something else as opposed to react to the situation. But the main bit at this stage is the inspiration of making vulnerability, or changing the face of vulnerability is the way I say it. Is that it's 2020, and vulnerability, particularly in men, is the thing. It is still deemed as a weakness. And it's which is utter horseshit. So it really to turn up as who you are, like as warts and all, and be vulnerable, is hands down, and put yourself out there, hands down, one of the bravest things you can do.
Totally.
Because you're out there, and you could, obviously someone could very easily say something whilst you're open, and it cuts right through to your core. And so it is very brave, but there still is, perception is powerful, and it's still seemed as a weakness. Whereas, and that's the goal of Plight Club, is to change the face of vulnerability, to make it. And I'm going to use these cool, but, in that, and having connections to the movie Fight Club. But the first rule of Plight Club is that you do talk about it, not don't talk about it.
Yeah. And it is so often that a lot of people find that when they are just sharing it just with one other person, they do feel that relief. I think a real challenge comes for a lot of people when you're sharing it in front of multiple people, like in a sharing circle that you get at a ceremony, for example, or in a men's circle. I think telling one or two people is comfortable for people, but the real radical change and deep work that is done, I believe, is when you are comfortable to share it with anyone that you're around. And I often have this experience when, you go into different sharing circles, or you go into different spaces, and it really bugs me when they say it. And they say, this is a safe space for you to say anything you want. It won't go outside of the circle. That's a lie. That fundamentally is a lie. Anybody at any time can say anything whatsoever about what happened in their day. And they might have been in your sharing circle, and they might go home and tell their partner. Not that you would ever know, but to assume that you're in a safe space, that no one's ever going to know your secret, keeps it a secret, and doesn't actually, for me, feel like you're doing the work. To actually get used to saying something along the lines of, I'm about to say something, and right now it's probably going to feel really uncomfortable, but if you get used to saying it and you don't care who he is because you're doing the work, it's not about like, let me just do damage control and only tell 3 people. It's actually saying it's not a safe space. And I went to a ceremony, authentic relationship training. And one of the guys actually said, this isn't a safe space. Whatever you say today could be repeated anywhere beyond this room, and you're just going to have to get used to it, because that's life. And I was just like, yay, finally somebody was real about it, because and that is the truth. At life in itself, we can't control it. We can't control who hears what. And especially like we're doing now, you're talking on a YouTube channel right now. Nobody's watching us live. People are listening to us on the radio, but nobody's watching us live. Nobody can really see us. But once this goes out live on YouTube, beyond this hour or however long we're going to do it, the whole world is there to see us talking about vulnerability and our feelings. And it's that, I feel, is a level of confidence worth getting to. Do you think that for you yourself, do you feel the difference between telling 1 or 2 people to telling maybe a group, or maybe bearing your all?
I think it comes in stages. So I think it's important to say, like, logically, a sharing circle, anyone could tell anyone. Of course they could. There's, and that's true of life. No one's like signing an NDA, and even then people could say. So, but to encourage, what the purpose of Plight Club is to encourage people to break through and take that first step. And my experience of sharing circles, this is where it started. Like where it started, Plight Club started was in a men's group in a sharing circle. And before everyone started talking, it was quite not frosty, but we just didn't know each other. So no one was really saying anything. But as soon as we started sharing and being open, the energy in the room shifted. And I was like, and changed, and it was like super. I get goosebumps now, but it was just amazing. And I was like, I don't know what that is, but I know the world needs more of it. So I now do know what that is, but that's like, but the thing is that those that come to a sharing circle, yes, granted, okay, it could get shared, but the chances are that they won't share it because they're being vulnerable too. So they wouldn't want their stuff shared. So it's just kind of like a bit of honor there, and stuff could get shared, but I don't want to put people off, from particularly men, from taking that first step, and like women too, of course, because there's women and men sharing circles, but men at this stage are even more reluctant to share. So I wouldn't want them to get the impression that a men's group will share is like everyone just starts talking about everything. But I think it's stages that, so, the whole thing of Plight Club is that a Plight Club could be 2 people, it could be 4 people, it could be 10 people, it could be 100 people, all happening at, and so if you saw someone on the train and you were having a hard day and you recognize the logo, then you could go there, that they're more open to talking. Those that have joined Plight Club so far, and it's like, again, there's not an NDA signed, but it's like, you know, they've been vulnerable and other people are vulnerable. So it's kind of like a balance between those two things.
Yeah, that makes sense. So with your like experience of obviously being part of a men's circle and obviously doing your expression clothing is what I came up with on the way home yesterday. Okay. Clothes that allow you to express yourself. I was just like, yes, expression clothing. I thought that was quite cool. Although you have connection clothing, I'm going, yeah, expression clothing. Do you think that the more people, you know, the more men see men wearing these t-shirts, do you feel that's enough for a man to go, do you know what, he's got a t-shirt on for like he's going to have that conversation? Or do you still think there'll be a little bit of resistance there? Do you, because I know a lot of girls will be like, oh my god, you got the same t-shirt on as me, yay, la la la, and you know, we start chatting and instantly we're in the same club. But guys aren't necessarily as welcoming like that. So do you think it's enough? Do you think it will just take a lot of time, or what's your kind of feeling about it?
I think it's going to take time, but there's a natural thing of you know, whenever you've got something in common with someone else, you create an emotional bond, and it's the same thing. And I'm hoping, in a way, for guys and it's girls too, but guys, if you link it to a football club, being part of a tribe in that way, yeah, is something that all humans are wanting to do. Men particularly have a massive urge to go into that space. And when I first started selling them, it was interesting that women bought the vulnerable one, which is about an individual, whereas initially guys were buying just the one that says Plight Club. And so it was, and that happened for a while actually, but it was almost like guys were more willing to be part of the tribe, and then women were more happy to put themselves out there as an individual, which I thought was fascinating. And that would, if you go into science behind that kind of makes sense. But I think that so, you know, it is getting there, and it's slowly building. And so anyone, please do buy a t-shirt, because that's the official way in. But it's the more people we can get on board, the more voices we have out there, the more, you know, satellite Plight clubs that are around the UK and hopefully the globe. Actually, there's quite a lot in America going on. The better. So I think it just takes time, and it's very much the first step to onto the journey of change in one's life. And so by not only by wearing the t-shirt, you put it visibly out there that you're part of Plight Club, and then obviously people can see that, but also by wearing a word on your chest, you can't help but remember that you're wearing the word on your chest. So it does encourage you to be more the thing. So you're a bit, you know, more fearless and then vulnerable. And it helps you, or it reminds you to be like, oh yeah, I'm actually putting myself out there. And it breaks the ice without having to say anything, which is very handy.
I think of another scenario that there may need to be some form of Plight Club. And I was thinking about it yesterday on the way home. Is, for example, my dad has woken up, should we say, spiritually now. He's on to his tipping point, and he's well on his way. And my mum's kind of like coming up over the hill somehow, slowly, a little bit slower. But having a Plight Club for parents that have children that have woken up, I think would be so interesting, because lots of parents don't have, like we were saying yesterday, don't have the language to be able to communicate in a way, but to with their children, not necessarily just, oh, you know, I'm a female, I'm turning up to a sharing circle, or I'm a male, I'm turning up, coming with all your problems in that. If there was something specific for parents to relate to their kids in this way, because everybody's got this new language, and it can be quite alienating and making parents feel like they're not necessarily you know, up on what's the latest and how do I solve this problem, and I want to communicate with my child who's changing radically and transformation every week, you know, poof, and it's who is this person? It would be very interesting. I don't know if you've heard of anything, but I thought of it yesterday. I thought it would be quite interesting to see if there was anything out there parent based.
Well, I think it as an example of how the power behind the Plight Club logo as such. I was at home back at my parents a few weeks ago. And I was sitting with my dad, and one of his friends came around, and they were talking about camper vans. But the friend asked me, he knows about Plight Club, and he was like, "How's it going?" And I was like, I explained that, yeah, it's going well, etc. And then he started talking about stuff that was happening in his life, like I think his sister or someone had recently died, and he got this weight on his shoulders, and this was happening, and this was happening. And then my dad started talking about stuff that happened in his personal life before, even, you know, and with his brother and various different people. And we created a very small sharing circle, even though they didn't realize it. But what was happening was that, and I facilitated the conversation very, very slightly, knowing what was going on. But I consider myself relatively experienced now at facilitating in that way and coaching and doing that. It's not that I'm coaching my parents, but I could hear what they were saying and listen and hold space for them. And I think as you once you're into Plight Club or any kind of spiritual journey, once you've taken that step to be, you've broken the cycle within yourself. So your journey is learning, and you learn, and then you end up, you know, holding space for your parents in this exact story, and helping them move forward, and then maybe nudging them into learning more about it. And so I don't know whether, you know, a Plight Club membership, this, you know, people that are whatever age. I think my dad's perhaps the oldest member, you know, 74. And then, you know,
I'll get my dad in it, and then he'll be the oldest member at 76. I think he's 76 actually. Dad, if you're listening later, please don't hate me, because I don't know how old you are. Forgotten. So that, but the thing is that so anyone wearing this shirt can help anyone else, regardless of age. So I think there could be something there that to use a comparison, when I started on my you know, my journey and self-growth, or whether you want to use self-growth, spirituality, whatever the term you want to use, I started to feel slightly alienated from, in a way, from society, you know, and so I did actually start to feel a bit alone and that kind of things, because I kind of, my whole belief system like shifted, and then I didn't want to go out and drink, and I never drank a huge amount, but I just didn't want to go and do that so much anymore. And I was kind of like, oh, okay, but then you have to put yourself out there and go, and I went to kind of dance practices and do these, and then you eventually meet people, and you kind of make new friends that are in that space, and you do that kind of thing. And I've not ditched my old friends by any way, shape or form, but it's kind of, I feel that and now a lot of my friends do come to me for a shoulder, and which I'm, you know, honored that they do, and because I think they do see me as a big fucking hippie, to be honest, which is, I'm honored for them to think that, but it's like I'm practiced at holding space in that way. So which I love doing. So, and I get a lot out of it. When someone opens up to you in any way, shape or form, I consider it's absolute gift. It's such an honor to be there, because it's them at their rawest. They're most vulnerable, and they're trusting you to help them, or they're looking for you to guidance, or just simply to listen. And I think that's amazing. It's a beautiful thing to be able to do for someone. It's interesting that you said the word hippie, because I've been called a hippie so many times, and some of the people that I'm, you know, where I'm from up north have said, oh, you know, you're a bit hippie-fied, and I'm like, what, because I care about myself and the planet, you're calling me a hippie? Like, what does that actually mean? Am I wearing flares? Am I back in the 70s? Have I got things around my head?
I think people think that hippie is a derogatory term, and it's not. It's just not. I think, thanks.
I was like, no, I was just like, because I care. I was like, it doesn't, like, it's this one word seems to fit all. And I couldn't really, you know, I'm free spirited. I couldn't be anything less of it. For me, a hippie is not a bad term at all, but it's somebody in the 70s. It's somebody that's, you know, doing, you know, back in the day. And it's like the way that they dress, the way that they live, all of that kind of stuff. There's a very particular way of being a hippie. You can be free spirited in different ways as well, but I don't think it's a bad term at all. But it's amazing how people use it. You know, if they say, you know, you're there sharing your feelings, that was a bit of a hippie, and you're like, okay, just because I have emotions and I'm talking about them.
But it's a natural reaction for, you know, if someone doesn't understand something, perhaps, you know, or they, you know, and I don't mean that in a negative way to them. It's just haven't learned it yet, so fine. But people often do react and kind of push something away, because it's like, oh, that's new and whatever, and I'll react to that, and it brings something up. But in relation to this energy we're talking, you know, and bringing it back to dating apps in that context, it's like there's dating apps in a way. They create a shortcut to pleasure, shall we say? And there is definitely a rule of thumb.
Something you mentioned in the field yesterday. It was the day before yesterday. No, I like this. Go on this one. This is a good one.
Well, there is a saying that you should never take any shortcut to pleasure, to an extent. So obviously if you can put drugs into that camp, you can put, including alcohol, whatever it might be. But what dating apps do is they allow you to meet a lot more people. And it just bypasses that initial kind of thing where you're out perhaps doing something you really enjoy, whatever, and you meet someone and you sense that there's an energy between you, and you have that kind of inspiration, and you like get super excited. And then the first date, when in that scenario, is you look forward to it. You're like, that's amazing. On dating apps, the first date is
like an appointment.
Yeah, it's a bit like, whew, that's it. It's like, let's meet for half an hour, have a coffee. But I always I try to call that date zero. So you go meet someone, and if there's a spark, because obviously you've been chatting, so you hope there's a spark. But the amount of stories, and it's particularly from women back, obviously generally talking about men, is that people are chatting, and it's like you meet them, and there's like nothing. And I don't quite know why that. And I've heard it the other way around too. But it's just there's not a spark. But obviously, when you see someone in a bar or wherever you are, you can tell that there's a spark almost without words.
Yeah.
And I think that dating apps, what they do is, we talked about the map, like just putting some arbitrary numbers on it. So there's 1% of the population that you're compatible with, and you would have that spark with. What dating apps do is enable you to meet a lot more people. Yeah. But if the dating apps didn't exist, there still would be that 1%, but you'd meet a lot less people. So dating apps, by just the nature of that, you will meet a lot more people that aren't right for you, or duds as we call them, which is a bit not the best term, but like people that don't fit. And it's like, okay, but
I'm meeting a load of duds. I love that.
If you accept dating apps for that you have to, you're looking for a needle in a haystack, and you're going to find lots of hay, aren't you? Of course. And so you go through, and there may be well with that. And I've heard lots of people have met their partners and done this, so they do serve a purpose, and they do work. But I hear, and this is girls particularly, have like got 3 or 4 dates a week, and it's like, whoa, okay, that's pretty extreme. That's like a job, and that's like, then for me, that's taking it's kind of the approach of you don't give anyone a chance. Like, so if you've got another date coming up, it's like, well, that thing, whatever, that tiny little thing's not quite right, so see you later. And there's a book, Things You Can Only See When You Slow Down.
Yes, it's in your bathroom.
Amazing book, yeah. But in it, it says people fall in love at different rates, which I'd never really thought of before, which makes total sense. Like, I'm 40 now, and I've been through X amount of relationships and learned a lot from all of them. But you naturally put up barriers. You can't help but put up. When you've had your heart broken quite a few times, your heart, you become toughened a little bit. So, and depending on how many times that's happened, and traumas in your childhood and various different things, to let someone in it's all subconscious, and you slowly do it. But people expect it to, this to happen straight away, and it's like, that's not how it works, really. When you meet, if you meet someone in a bar, that you perhaps got a spark, but there is so much more towards a relationship than having just a spark. That's important, of course, but obviously how you talk to each other, compatibility, where you are in life. The list is endless, isn't it? Really, but it is.
I feel like I totally get what you mean with the dating apps, with the kind of the duds, as you call them, or whatever. Like that kind of. I personally don't want to go on dating apps again, and I won't. And I've been on it 3 times. I've met a couple of guys. I've met 2 really nice guys that are now my friends, which I love them to bits. And I've met 2 guys who were interesting, shall we say. And I learned a few things, which was great. But I did see it as kind of like, what's the point? Like, what, it didn't kind of fulfill me, let's say, in any particular way. And I do trust that the last 2 guys that I've met from the universe, let's call it the universal dating app, that just basically brings you what you need as and when you need it, have actually been a bit more mysterious, and there's a bit more around them. And I've actually learned a lot more from that situation, because it's like the universe brings you what you need, not necessarily what you want. And there's more. I like the butterflies. I like that. Oh, does that person like me? Does that person not like me? What's the story? You know, if you're on a dating app, you're like, right, you're definitely up for it. You're definitely on. It's definitely a thing. But the mystery of whether you like someone or that floating or what it could be, and you know, there's so much magic in that space. And I feel like there's so much more. I mean, I get goosebumps thinking about it now. What could this be? And am I going to see that person again? Am I going to hear from that person again? I don't have any control over that. Like, for example, this weekend, you know, I met someone last year at a festival. We kissed and we didn't even know which other's name was. And that was just beautiful in itself. And it was very strange. I've never done it before in that way, but it served a purpose. And then this week, he was actually at the festival again, and the same kind of thing happened again, but we spoke a little bit more this time. But there's a magic to that, and there's an energy to that. Lord knows where it will be, and if I'll see him this time next year or before then. But when we have dating apps, we have so much control. We can bring in the size, the area. We can bring in what religion they are. We can bring in what they're into. You know, we literally tailor make our order like we're ordering a bespoke version from some Amazon type store. And what we think we want isn't necessarily what we want. Because really, if I said, right, I want tall, hot, dark, all of these things, there's loads of those out there. But the energy could be way off. And I don't necessarily know what I need. You know, the universe brings me what I need. And even if it's sparse and you know, have to wait a year in between or whatever, the universe brings me what I need. And I have to stick with that and not get sucked in on the fact that I might be bored one Friday and be like, oh, I need to download Hinge. Because that's not going to work for me. I'm in Yorkshire. I mean, there's nothing on the Hinge up here if I've checked.
Well, I've got a few things on that, I think.
Go on.
The doing stuff that you like, you enjoy doing, and because I'm not on dating apps anymore, and I think there's a societal pressure to, you know, get into a relationship, and you like, you know, we talked about, you know, if you go to uni, I've been to school, done uni, got a job, now I've got to like, what now, Dad? Or now what now, Mum? It's like, oh, okay, but now get a partner. Oh, I've got a partner now. Have a baby, get married, whatever. And there's that linear thing, which is fine. And in some people, it just happens for them in that. But it quite often, from experience, it hasn't happened in that order. And I find that, you know, so I've come off dating apps for the reason, well, and it was a while ago, but and I did meet a significant partner on it through a dating app about 2 years ago or 3 years ago, which, so they do, as I said, they do work. But what I realized recently, and I wrote an article called The Hangover, and I realized that I was in a relationship hangover that started 5 years ago. And so I've met, in that 5 years, I've met three people that I think could have been a partner for, like, a life partner. But just the timing was wrong. Like, I wasn't emotionally ready for meeting someone. And I didn't and that the only thing that heals that is time. But what the dating apps give you the ability to do is fast forward things, and you meet people, and there's nothing you can do about it. You know, so you meet whoever you meet, and it kind of, that list that you've got, you might meet someone, but because you're not ready, you might end up pushing them away. So from the universe approach, and that sentence, the universe brings, it's like, it's something that makes sense to me. It's something that makes sense to you. But that only comes through, you know, once you've been into your, you know, that journey a while, and you've opened up spiritually, then that lingo and that's like, okay, I can leave it to the universe, and you'd be okay with that. And there's an element of trust, letting go of control in that. But what I've figured out for myself recently, or what I've read particularly, and it's like, I consider myself a Taoist, so and that is very much, universe is there, and having trust in it that things will be okay. Sorry, I've been message. But what I read, I'm reading this book at the moment, and it just started, and it's the Tao of Pooh, which is Winnie the Pooh explaining what Taoism is, which is, you know, is what it is. But in it says, if you're looking for something and you try and find it, there's a chance that you're much less likely to find it. So if you have this list of people, a list of traits that you're looking for, you essentially narrow the possibility of the world down to this. And it's like, so you're looking for this, but the actual person that might be the love of your life might not be what you think you want. It might be just slightly to the. So what I've done now, and what I'm doing now, is trying my hardest not to find someone.
Yeah.
Just like concentrate on me, be, you know, be myself, go to things that I love doing, put myself in that space, you know, just be who I am for a while.
Yeah.
And like, as an example, at the weekend, that girl that went past, won't put a name to her, but you were like, and as I turned around, I was like, whoa, because she was very
hot.
yeah,
for anybody that's listening, she was super hot, and she floated by, and we were like,
and
I was
her
like,
energy,
she's hot, go after her.
Her energy just like hit me. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
And I was like, and you were like, go after it. And I was like, no, it's fine. I'm not in that headspace at this point in time. And I do believe if it's meant to be, it will be. Like, or, you know, and as I've told, I've got something with someone that I'm working through and various different stuff. So it's not I'm not in that headspace, and I don't want, like, I'm not after that. I'm just trying to work on me, be me. And I do genuinely believe that that person will materialize when I'm ready. And you can feel, so I, you know, as back to the point of the hangover, it's like, I think people, break up with someone, and then because of the societal pressure, they're like, well, and social media and all the crap that's linked to that, is that, well, they're having an amazing time, and it's like, which their chances are they're not, but people perceive that they are, and so therefore I need to get out there dating, I need to do this and get back on the horse as such. And it's rushed, and it's something that is the one thing, or one of the one things in life that you can't rush. If you know, you just need to let it happen. Having said that, there are situations. I'm a very physical person, and I, you know, to be touched. And sometimes, you know, as we discussed, you just want to get laid. You know, you want, and it works for men and women as well. And you just want to be with someone and feel someone. And if that is the scenario that, you know, you meet two people and that, you know, you meet someone and that's obviously what it is, then no harm, no foul. Like it is that you'll go into that scenario. And obviously, you know, the people are there, both people are there understanding what it is. And I'm obviously not saying don't lie about it, just be open about the scenario, of course. But we all need that connection, and we all need that physical touch, and we all need that. And the book that I lent to you talks about connection and how emotional security and how important that is. And that links back to Plight Club and spirituality as well. It's like, so, you know, if you're feeling vulnerable, or even if you're feeling excited or you're feeling happy, or you're not emotionally, you know, secure at that point in time, so you get knocked up. So when you're in, you know, you've come out of a relationship, often you're definitely not, you know, feeling emotionally secure anymore, because you know, may have been rejected, or you may have done the rejecting, or whatever it might be. And in order to people to feel emotionally secure, they reach out to someone, and they get that momentarily, and it's like, in a way, a bit like taking a drug, that you have that drug and then it goes away, and then you fall deeper into the pit that you were in. And it's like, so it's very kind of surface level. It fulfills a need for that moment, and don't get me wrong, those moments can be incredibly fun and enjoyable, but afterwards you do feel a bit hollow. And still, so I think that, as the name, that links right back to the beginning. It's with dating apps, they bypass a lot of the natural slowing down that is required in when you meet someone, so it's not rushed. And even mobile phones and WhatsApp, you know, I was born in, you know, the 80s, and so my first experience of dating, I think, like around 16, there was no mobile. From memory, I didn't have a mobile phone, and it was very much, you could call their house. And you know, so you could only, and it's like,
I remember that time. Although I'm 26 for life, I do remember that time. 26 for life, but I do remember a time where I used to have to sit and wait for the phone call coming to the house phone, and we had a long cable that was a curly cable. I used to spend hours just rolling it around my fingers and twiddling it and rolling it back and tying it in knots and untying it, still waiting for someone to call. And if you were on the phone, if you were on the phone at the same time, or somebody else had a call, you could have missed. Get off the phone! I'm waiting for a call. It was crazy.
Yeah, but that naturally pumps the brakes on meeting something, you know. So it slows things down, and I think that and I know this is my experience of, like, you know, I was until 2 or 3 years ago, I was in a much more of a rush than I am now. Like, and I appreciate I, you know, for women particularly, getting to a certain age, that, and they, you know, they're attached to having to have, you know, having kids. There's much more burden in that way, and I get it, totally understand that, and I'm lucky, well, as a man, that we don't necessarily have that time clock in the way. So, but by learning to, you know, I don't necessarily think just smashing date after date after date after date in the diary is the answer to that. It's almost like the best thing to do is work on what's underneath the desire to have a date. You know, what are you looking for that? Why do you need a date? Because if you've not got, you know, there's perhaps no trust in the universe, or I don't know whether it's, I don't want to judge people because it's not, there's no judgment, but as an observation, you know, what is under there is, you know, there could be fear of abandonment issues, there could be attachment issues, there could be self-worth issues, there could be, and like I've had all that myself, you know, with it, you know, and the main one being control issues, like so trying to control things that are outside of your control, because meeting someone, in meeting your life partner or a person that will be, you know, a significant person in your life, is completely out of your control. Like it even, and as you said about dating apps, it feels like you're in control, but you're really not, you know, and the chances are you would have met whoever is going to be that, you'll meet someone anyway. Like before, whenever dating apps came out, whatever, 10 years ago, people still met each other. Like we
all the time.
Yeah, we function perfectly well. It's like we don't need dating apps at all. In fact, I don't think they're a benefit for dating. They kind of ruin dating. And because I love the dating process in the sense of you meet some of the butterflies and all that, which is amazing. Looking forward to going out on the first date, doing what in the first kiss, and it's like super exciting. It's lovely. But then dating apps, it's like, you know,
they manufacture that process.
Yeah, and it just feels a bit stale. And so, but I'm sure, you know, perhaps at some point when I'm feeling a bit, you know, bummed out or whatever, that I will, you know, reach out for the dating apps to find some sort of comfort. But that's what you know, that's what I see them as, in a way, as it's a comforting thing. And I did when a couple of years ago when I was on them, I was like, you know, and having come out of a breakup, I did get a bit of self-esteem from the amount of matches I got. So when you get a match, and you do naturally, like when you get a match, you have a dopamine hit in your body, and you feel like, oh, that's nice. And you know, there's even an element of oxytocin that will kick off because you had and you feel like you had an attachment with someone, even though simply because they've liked you and you've liked them.
Yeah, that makes
sense. But when you're going to the apps for that, and it's kind of like a drug, and you're going to get that, you know, the recognition. You're in that's not right.
You're going to be in a dark hole.
Yeah, you need. Dig whatever's under that. You need to sort out that shit, and that.
I think you really do have to be what you want to attract as well. And I think a lot of people are looking for something out there, and that I want this. Are you that? Are you, you know, loving? Are you kind? Are you flexible? Are you, you know, really generous? Are you someone who's telling the truth all the time? Are you someone who's embodying, you know, all the loving skills possible? And do you speak the right love language and all this kind of stuff? And, you know, I've spent a very long time on my own, as you know, and I wanted to sort myself. I met someone. I was single for a long time, and then I met someone, and we didn't actually date. We kind of connected, as I call it, but we didn't date. But he made me realize that if I wanted to be with someone who embodied some of the traits that he had, or to have that kind of love again, I had to be that. And I spent a lot of time once we parted, ways of, you know, I need to improve myself first and foremost. Like I can't keep bringing in the same stuff that I was bringing in before because it didn't work for me. So somebody said to me, a very wise person at the time who I don't actually speak to anymore, I haven't seen for a long time, had a bit of he went on a bit of a bad trip, but some of the wisest things he's ever said to me is like, you just need to ask for someone, because I went to him with a list. I had my long list of what I wanted in a guy, and it was tall, the whole thing. And he was like, why don't you ask for someone compatible? And I was just like, yeah, I will, but they have to be tall. He's like, no, I know. But obviously if they're tall, they're compatible. So just take out the list, just ask for someone compatible and you'll get what you need. And I was like, oh, no. So I had my list and I was like, right, I'm going to stick to my list. And I met someone and he was on my list. And unfortunately, he beat me up, which when he was drunk. And it was a horrific experience. And I went back to my friend and I said, yeah, this is what happened. He said, ready to ask for something compatible? And I was just like, okay. So I scrapped the list. I actually burnt the list with him. We did this little ceremony. I burnt the list and I said, I'm ready for something compatible. And I met someone who was, you know, up to now, somebody that I love very dearly. And he was compatible in many ways, but we still weren't together. And that also was what I needed, not what I wanted. That was what I needed. We never got together, but we had an incredible love with each other, and it was beautiful, but it wasn't a relationship. And that was just what I needed, because when he left, I was like, oh, I need to work on myself. I get this now. I need to do all this work. And that was the universe again. You know, I didn't know anything. I learned so much in that period, and it's beautiful. But I feel like now I would be doing myself a disservice if I went onto a dating app and I started trying to manipulate what it was I wanted, because I get, you know, sweet gifts all the time. And to, you know, even down to last week and this weekend just gone, a lovely gift that I'm like, okay, cool. And these are times that are beautiful, that I cherish, and they don't come around very often, especially in 2020. I mean, there's not that many sweet gifts flying around at the moment. We're having a bit of a sparse one, but they're still showing because I still believe. So I think that's the most important thing. But before we go, I want you to, I do my cards. I always do this with Charles. Go on, what were you going to add?
But just to say that, like that 5 years ago when I met the person who's in the article, met her on a train, and I remember thinking before I met her that I was like, I'm happy as I am. I'm not bothered about meeting anyone. I'm like, I'm good. Like, I'm fine. And I was happy, like really genuinely happy being alone. Bang, you meet someone. And that's not an accident. That's just kind of,
it's the resistance is gone.
Yeah. It's like, I'm open to meeting someone, but I'm not up for it. And I can feel now that I'm approaching that stage where it's like, I, you know, as an example, that girl, you know, using the girl at the festival, like I wasn't interested in forcing the scenario or chasing anything or getting any validation or getting anything. It was like, I'm all right. I'm kind of happy just being me now. And like the longer that goes on, and the more I put myself out into scenarios where I'm having, you know, dancing or whatever they are, the higher chance I'm just going to be like, oh, okay, and bump into someone. It's like, and then you're not trying very hard. You're just being yourself. And you can also know that it's okay to walk away. Like, it's fine. You don't need that. You don't need anything from them. Your life is chipper as it is. You're good. And then that I believe that people meet people and they're ready to anything prior to that. If you're, you know, you feel like you're wanting something in validation or trying to appease someone, or you know, then you're not. I think that you're less likely to meet someone unless you meet someone and you know, you can work through your shit together. I think that there's
super important to do.
Yeah. That scenario, definitely, I think that, but then that takes, you know, learning how to communicate properly, doing various different things in that sense, and holding space and learning, you know, read stuff by Esther Perel, read stuff by Sue Johnson, those books. I'll let you, Hold Me Tight. What's the other one? That Love Science one, her one that Rich read recently. And anything that can help you with uncertainty, that kind of stuff. And once you kind of learn those things, then when you meet someone, you can actually express properly how you feel. Like, and for me, being guilty of not expressing how I feel, I used to do this thing. I know we're running out of time, but I used to say how I feel, and I would caveat it afterwards with something to soften the blow. And I learned that is partly to do with control and partly to do with the fear of abandonment. But to learn the sentence, say, I feel this and I need this, you know, so I feel this, or this happened, I feel this, I need this. It's like, that's perfectly okay to say in that way. And that's and there's a, you know, not like whatever the term for conversation is, there is a term for that. But having that and being able to have that structure, even that simple structure, and learning to do that, and it's all starting with I, rather than, there's no blame. There's, you did this, you know, whatever. And as soon as you go into you did this, you poke a raw spot within them, and then you argue about something that's nothing to do with what you're arguing about in the first place. But expressing how you feel, which is all what Plight Club's about, is where it starts. But you need to learn how to do that and use the tools. You need the tools and the language to be able to do that. But first and foremost, you need to recognize what's within you, the triggers, the things, and all the stuff that kind of has built up through your life. So that when someone talks to you in a way and you react and you get that weird kind of angry feel or whatever it is, that you can kind of see what triggered it. And if you can see what triggered it, you can pause momentarily and you can act as opposed to react to the thing.
Yeah.
And then it's in a different ballpark. It's amazing once you break through that. You're like, it's what happens in your life, not just romantic relationships, just in general. It's beautiful. It's a really good, and you can use
to learn how to use the right language is
I got triggered and things like that. It's like we've used that all the time, and once it becomes normal, it's your normal language. It's like, oh, you did that. That kind of triggered. I felt I was triggered then. But it's a non-threatening thing back to you. You don't feel threatened by that, and you feel, and you.
No, I just like, it's not my fault. I've just played a role in someone's trigger. I can now help them rather than take offense.
Exactly.
But yeah. So we are coming up to the last 3 minutes of the show. So we're going to do the cards, Adam. Sorry.
Okay.
I have to get out of it. So you have to tell me. These are my cards, I always say, from my accountant. He made them. He's a great accountant. And they're truth cards. So tell me when to stop shuffling, Adam.
Okay.
These are for you. Split them. Do you want my left or my right?
I want your left.
Left. Most people. I'm not going to say what actually most people do, but I'm going to. Are you going to top, middle, or bottom?
Bottom.
Mm-hmm.
That's where
Ooh, live now. So focus on today. Let the past and the future recede. Stay in the present. Let go of the thoughts of other people or other times. A clear, strong connection between your body and soul will solve this. Become more grounded. Bring your focus to your physical body and breathe. Set aside regrets or fantasies. Embrace the reality as it is now. And the reality is that we are both single, Adam, and we have to just be okay with that right now. And the rest will come.
Yes.
Love that. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. And you will be back talking. I know we've got lots of other things planned. And I tried to put this on the radio at the same time this morning as on the YouTube, and I failed miserably. So there's a different show going on the radio, but this will be on the app very soon. And there's a replay on the radio. And we are going to be back on Friday morning. I've got Charles with me on Friday morning. I'm not sure what we're talking about, but we'll figure it out and we'll let you know. But Adam, thank you so much for being, and thank you for my amazing weekend, and driving in your car and letting me stay at your house and being the amazing man that you are.
Thank you very much. That's very kind, and your pleasure. It was a good weekend. It was fun.
Yay. On for the next one. I don't know if there's any more festivals that we can go to this year, but I'm sure we'll find one. But thank you very much. And for anybody that is listening right now, let me just read out for the rest of the day on our app. We have, let me just read out what radio shows we've got for the rest of the day. What day is it today? It's Wednesday, right? Jeez Louise. Okay, so we've got Claptone this afternoon at 12 o'clock. We've got Sam Felt at 1. We have Oliver Heldens at 2. Louis the Child at 3. We've got Alice in Wonderland at 4. And then we're back to some old school nostalgia, old school raving from 5 o'clock. And we'll see you on Friday. Bye for now.